Parents. And Chris Steyerwalt breaks down the status of the third-party candidates, along with what Mick Mulvaney is hearing and where he thinks Nikki Haley goes from here. Thanks for being with us here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman, joined today by the aforementioned Chris Steyerwalt, NewsNation political editor, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, Julia Manchester, of course, the national political reporter for The Hill and host of The Hill TV's What's America Thinking. Brad Howard is a Democratic strategist, and Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor as well. The Hill on NewsNation starts right now. All right, come on in. Thanks for being with us here on The Hill. And right off the top here, Donald Trump descending on D.C. today. The former president here trying to get the endorsement of the Teamsters Union, which has some 1.3 million members all across the country. Now, afterwards, he spoke to reporters for about 20 minutes or so, where he implored Republicans at points to kill any border deal that lets in thousands of illegal immigrants daily.
If you're not going to get a great border bill and immigration bill, don't do a bill. 5,000 people a day, that's a lot. That's like record-setting stuff.
Trump also said he would kill another deal, the proposed sale of U.S. steel.
I would block it. I think it's a horrible thing. When Japan buys U.S. steel, I would block it instantaneously.
And the former president repeatedly suggested that he would reverse the Biden administration's electric vehicle mandate.
The electric mandate is a disaster. They don't go far enough. They cost too much. We don't have the materials to make them.
One of the things that caught my attention, one of the final things that the former president said, his final words to reporters included this, quote, "See you on the trail." Hello to you all. Nice to have you in. Is that what we're going to expect from Donald Trump and hear from Donald Trump here over the next, 10 months or so?
Well, that was a chill version of Donald Trump. That was the sedate.
It was pretty monotone today from him.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that it didn't go super with the Teamsters.
You think that's what that was?
Because otherwise he would be bing, ba, 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 ba. What do you think, Meg?
First of all, I think that Blake has now started doing the hand motions when he talks about Trump. So we have
going to be huge.
It struck me as a little low energy. I agree with that. I don't necessarily think it's because it went bad with the Teamsters. Teamsters actually like him. The rank and file really like him. His trade policies, they really like. He did really well with union voters in both 2016 and 2020. But you're right. It wasn't the ordinary Trump. So I don't know if there was something else going on, but I did immediately jump to he had a bad meeting with
So what about this play for the union vote? 2020, you referenced President Biden, 56% of the union vote, Donald Trump, 40%. He does trail, but was closing the gap.
I mean, part of the problem with the union vote is union households culturally, in terms of values, are more aligned with Republicans than sometimes Democrats on the social issues. So that's, and particularly in Ohio, where the state has gotten more socially conservative due to certain segments of the population leaving and certain remaining behind. So this culture shock has always kind of been an issue. And it started with Hillary's campaign. I was managing a campaign in Indiana statewide and talking to the labor workers and send a note back to the Hillary campaign saying, we've got problems because they're not excited about this campaign. I do think Joe Biden is the Democrat who can win a lot of those voters back, but it's going to be tough because what I saw today was a very concise, clear Donald Trump. I mean, there was no bird braid references. There was nothing like that.
Right. Yeah, it was
totally. The messages were very simple, I thought, for complex issues. Now, a lot of them were impossible to achieve and are probably wrong and misguided, but they were simple and easy to understand.
National political reporter for The Hill, what'd you hear there?
Look, what I heard was someone who's obviously making a play for these voters in very important states like Wisconsin and Michigan. You know, I've been focusing a lot on Michigan, how that's going to play for Biden and Trump. And Michigan is a tough spot for Biden right now. I think a lot of it has to do, obviously, with the Israel-Hamas war, how a lot of the Muslim voters and Arab American voters in Michigan are reacting to that. But I think for Trump to really seize on that and seize on Biden's weaknesses in Michigan, he has to also appeal to those other bucket of voters in Michigan, these union voters, and also in Wisconsin. I was talking to Republican pollster yesterday, and he said he thinks Wisconsin is the state we're not talking enough about in terms of a swing state.
Real quickly, what are the three things he goes to the microphone? He talks about steel, he talks about the border, and he talks about EVs. These are all sweet spots for union voters. So my guess is that's what the discussion was about. out.
The Teamsters, when Richard Nixon pardoned Jimmy Hoffa in 1971.
Was he dead yet or not?
Well, you're assuming he's dead. When he pardoned the massively corrupt Teamsters boss, Jimmy Hoffa, pardoned him in 71, and that got the Teamsters endorsement for every Republican except for Gerald Ford in 1976 until 1992. The Teamsters were a Republican endorsing union until 1992. They switched to Democrats. They haven't been back since. Could they switch for Trump this time? It's not that many votes, but boy, with Trump, with Biden having the UAW endorsement, this is a way for Trump to say, well, I've got union endorsements.
Last
too.
40 years, according to the Labor Department, union membership in this country fell from 20% of all workers to 10%. Wow. So it's a smaller voting bloc.
And that includes service workers, too, which are not necessarily the same demographic group.
Yeah, and then Florida service workers, a very different electorate than up there. But you also got to consider the down ballot implications in Michigan and Wisconsin, where we have competitive Senate races.
So, by the way, here was the Biden campaign response. They say, quote, Donald Trump pretends to be pro-worker, then sides with management and does nothing while factories close and jobs are lost. That from the Biden campaign earlier today. All right. Meantime, back here in Washington, the top Republican in this town has seemingly had enough. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, taking to the House floor today, rattling off a list of missteps that he thinks President Biden has made with immigration policy and the southern border.
They have chosen disorder and chaos. They have ceded the homeland to the traffickers and the cartels. And the Department of Homeland Security has effectively become a taxi driver to just help traffickers complete the last few miles of their human smuggling operation. And they're making billions of dollars in the process. It's all absolute madness.
Now, shortly after, the White House responded, imploring Republicans to strike a bipartisan border deal.
Our challenge to House Republicans is this. Will you go against the very voices you typically listen to, play a dangerous, unconstitutional game? Or will you listen to what many of you yourselves have been saying?
All right. Obviously, a lot going on with this border deal. A bipartisan group trying to put it together. Donald Trump today, you heard off the top there why he says there shouldn't be one. Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, went to the House floor and basically outlined why there's not going to be a deal. You texted me what today, Mick?
Yeah. I was actually in the building today talking to some senior Republicans, and they had an attitude. It was really interesting to sit and chat with them. They really feel like they're going to keep the majority. And I don't know if it's because of the border. I don't know if it's because of inflation. But it's the first time I've heard that. I mean, the last couple of weeks, it's all been we can't govern, we need to go into minority, et cetera. Something has happened in just the last couple of weeks. When I see Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, on the floor giving that speech, I don't think that speech is intended for us. I don't think it's intended for the electorate back home. I think that speech is intended for his own membership. The Republicans may be coming together over the border after ripping themselves apart.
What would you say to folks who say, you know what, I heard Republicans for years, decades talk about we need something done at the border, and now they're saying the total opposite. No legislation. We don't need a deal.
Is that what they're saying? Or are they saying?
Yeah, that's part of the criticism.
Or are they saying we don't want a bad deal? I mean, keep in mind, and this is something no one's been able to answer for me. Why can't Biden, at least, with the authority that he has now and the money that he has now, at least get it back to where Trump was before COVID? I recognize it was different during COVID, different rules and so forth, but the border was not like this with Trump before COVID. Why can't Biden get it back there? And I think the Republicans can make some hay out of that.
Yeah, certainly. But, first of all, I think it's pretty ironic to see Speaker Johnson outline someone else's missteps, because he's had quite a few since he's taken the realm as Speaker. But I agree with Mick in the sense that there's so much that's dividing the House Republican Conference at the moment. He sees this as an opportunity to unite them behind an issue that is pretty well unifying in the party, and to allow him to continue to negotiate on the must-pass pieces of legislation like government funding that we've got at
Stirewalt has that look on his face like he thinks we're both crazy. Look at that look.
No. I think you're both right. But
is that what that look is?
But I also think that I don't foreclose the possibility of some legislation here.
Yeah.
I agree.
And here's why: the louder they howl, the closer they are. Is typical Hill talk, right? So the more the rhetoric escalates, the more likely there is to be a bill, because the only way that you get a bill is if the Speaker can say, "I beat him in the face. I pummeled them with a bowling pin. I threw them down a flight of stairs. I fought and got this." We haven't seen the bill yet.
Right.
We don't know what's in it. But we do know that this is sort of how legislation is supposed to work, which is Democrats want Ukraine funding, Republicans want border funding. That's how it's supposed to work. I think that it's a slim chance that it will succeed in an election year, but the very fact that we're still talking about it and the very fact that he's howling suggests to me that it's a live ball.
Does this happen? The government funding comes up in the beginning of March.
Right.
Is that where this happens?
I mean, potentially, but I'm curious to see what the political implications are of such legislation. So in the case that, something is passed, can Trump still, howl and complain about the situation at the southern border when you have, do Democrats take credit for that? How does that work? So I'm curious.
Well, and I'll say two things. Number one, this is just a border bill. It doesn't address comprehensive immigration.
Right.
So there's plenty of the Republicans to keep. And secondly, the thing that gives me the most hope here is Kyrsten Sinema, the senator.
Oh yeah, you were with her recently, right?
I had a chance to talk to her on the weekend about immigration reform, and she's a border state independent that caucuses with the Democrats, but her view is that she wants to make it tougher penalties on those who cross the border, particularly repeat offenders, something the Republican House bill doesn't address. And so Sinema has shown an ability to get things done and to negotiate and get results and give the president some wins here. You look at immigration and other things. So I think she's the glue here that ultimately gets something across the finish line.
All right, come on in, Republican Congressman from the state of New York, Anthony D'Esposito. He is also a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Congressman, thanks for being back here on the Hill. Often as you are, you've been listening to some of this. Do you want a deal? You want a border deal, yes or no?
I want to secure the border. That's what I want. I think it's insane that we've heard now from Democrats and partisans who have said, the Republicans have done nothing. It's about time that you step up to the plate and do something, work with Democrats. And I mean, if you look at the deal, they still want to allow millions of people to come across our southern border. And the question that I continue to ask is, we sent H.R. 2 over to the Senate back in May, and it sat and collected dust on Chuck Schumer's desk until recently. And now I'm not saying that everything in that bill was right. I'm not saying that we needed to agree on everything. But the border has been an issue since Joe Biden has taken office, and it's gotten worse every day since. We are setting records, and they're not ones that we should be proud of. And the fact is that back in May, Chuck Schumer and the Senate should have gotten in touch with the House of Representatives, and we should have had a conversation. We should have began negotiations. We should have began speaking about how to secure our border. But instead, they waited till now, when they're looking at polls. We've entered an election year, and they realized that Biden's poll numbers are in the dumpster, and it's about to ignite.
You say the numbers are nothing that we should be proud of. Wall Street Journal editorial board, as you are one of the folks who want to move forward with the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, right-leaning, says that should be nothing that anyone is proud of. Quote, impeaching Mayorkas achieves nothing. Grandstanding is easier than governing, and Republicans have to decide whether to accomplish anything other than impeaching Democrats. Mr. Mayorkas is an easy political target, but impeaching him accomplishes nothing beyond political symbolism. They are essentially saying that you and your colleagues are grandstanders and are wasting your time, Congressman. You would say what?
The last time a cabinet secretary was impeached was in 1876, and we heard it over and over again yesterday from my Democrat colleagues that this is all about policy and not about the law. Well, it's about the law. The fact is that Secretary Mayorkas has violated his oath. He took an oath to protect and serve this country and protect it from enemies, foreign and domestic. He's failed. He took an oath that he would follow the laws set forth by Congress. Not only has he failed that, he's intentionally not followed those laws. He's lied to Congress, and he's had, you talk to Customs and Border Patrol agents, you talk to Homeland Security investigators, and these are their words, not mine. They testified in front of the Homeland Security Committee, and we've heard from Homeland Security investigators who have said they are no longer conducting investigations, but instead they're working along the border, making sandwiches for their colleagues. That's the country that we want to live in. I think Secretary Mayorkas has failed this country, and he deserves to be impeached.
As you know, Congressman, you are in a swing district for the audience at home and those listening to us on Sirius XM. Your district is one of the ones to watch. And we heard from the former president today talk about why there should not be a border deal as far as we know it as it's constructed right now. We saw Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, on the floor today, outlining some of that as well. Does Donald Trump's position right now, Congressman, on the border help or hurt your reelection chances in your district?
I think Donald Trump, when it comes to the border, is standing for the American people. If you look at polls anywhere throughout this country, you made a perfect point that my district is one that Joe Biden won in 2020 by 16 points. It is on the top of the minds of people that live in my district. It is the top, when people are polled, it's the top issue facing these communities. And these are communities where Democrats far outnumber Republicans, but yet it's the issue that's on their mind. And we are right. We shouldn't be just settling because the Senate says so. Honestly, the deal that we've read so far and the numbers that they're proposing of migrants coming across our southern border in this so-called deal doesn't seem like a deal to me. It seems like a surrender.
Congressman, got to leave it there. Congressman D'Esposito from New York. Thanks again, as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Yep, you got it. One thing that I heard there, I don't know if you picked up on it, H.R. 2 is what House Republicans say we need. He's saying, and he's a moderate Republican, I'm not saying we need everything that is in H.R. 2, and I wonder if that's where this goes, to your point earlier.
Yeah, and our wise friends and colleagues here have pointed out that once everything gets jammed up into continuing resolution to fund the government and everything else is going on, then maybe you get a little piece of it, a little from column A, a little from column B. My goodness, we might see some governing going on. We might see a little legislation. Wouldn't that be exciting, Joey?
Right.
We could do for a change.
For a change,
Yeah.
no, especially in an election year.
I
said, politics is playing into this.
All right. Still to come here from the Hill on the other side of the break, Chris Steyerwalt breaks it down on third-party candidates. What does it mean right now with RFK Jr. coming up, the polling, where he's on the ballot, where he's not? Chris breaks it down.
People have taken your idea and they've turned it into a nightmare for the American people.
And social media safety taking center stage today up on Capitol Hill. Mark Zuckerberg, did you see this moment? That right there. He was asked, do you want to apologize, Mark? And he stood up and he did. What he said and who he said it to when the Hill returns. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is signaling that he may be open to running for president as a candidate for the Libertarian Party. So how does one go from running in the Democratic primary to then launching an independent bid to possibly jumping in with the Libertarians? Steyerwalt here to break it all down. Chris?
In the election where Teddy Roosevelt lost the Republican primary to William Howard Taft, large and in charge William Howard Taft, you know what he did? He walked right across town and he held his own convention and started the Progressive Party, the Bull Moose Party, that same day in Chicago. There's plenty of history around the idea of making it up as you go along when it comes to third parties. People do it all of the time. So the big consideration for most of the past year when it comes to third parties has been no labels. The groovy, ice your own cupcake kind of whatever you want it to be party that promises that it's going to offer a great bipartisan alternative to Donald Trump and Joe Biden if that happens. A safety valve. Okay, they've been at it a long time. How are they doing on ballot access? Take a look. Here you go. Should be a map of the United States. There it is. Appropriately purple, you see there. And you also see that they're on the ballot in some key states, right? They're there in Arizona, they're there in Nevada, and they're there in North Carolina, which will be three of the most competitive states in November. Now, you know what you don't see there? Any way that a no-labels candidate could win the presidency outright, that could win 270 electoral votes, certainly. But the premise, of course, is, well, somehow we'll throw it into the House of Representatives and then something, and wonderful bipartisan presidency exits. Now, we've also heard a lot about the aforementioned RFK Jr. He of gravelly voice and bespoke ideas on many issues, tailored to his own set. So he's going to run as an independent. One state, just Utah, which has the most generous ballot access. They are among the easiest to get on the ballot for. That's why Eglish McMuffin was able to get on the ballot there in 2020. And it's Utah. We love you, Utah. Stay weird. So that one state is not going to be enough to get Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the ballot and in the discussion. But look at this. Look at this. Look. Oh, my gosh. Look at the Libertarians. They are all over the place. They're on the ballot in 6 battleground states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. And they will be on the ballot in more states because some states have different rules, different times. But because the Libertarian Party has been on and around and getting votes for president in so many states for so long, they'll be on by the end, they'll be on the ballot in almost all 50 states, and certainly in competition for 270 electoral votes. So why would environmental activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr., husband of Hollywood celebrity, why would he align himself with the Libertarian Party, which historically has been about small government, has been about limited government, has been about sort of a Ron Paul nuke the Fed and let people drink raw milk? What is the answer there? And the answer is ballot access for him. But for libertarians, the answer is they want attention. They want a candidate that's going to get out there and get in the discussion and it could generate a decent share of votes. RFK Jr. could do it. Libertarians are open to it. I bet you he gets down with it. My hunch from the beginning is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Libertarians are going to have their convention in Philadelphia this summer, and I bet you that by the time that comes around, he will be drinking raw milk, and he'll be feeling the vibes.
The Kennedy campaign
breaks it down.
The Kennedy campaign announced today that he raised $7 million in Q4 of last year.
And did you hear Donald Trump blow his absolute stack when somebody asked him if he would have RFK as his running mate?
He shot that
let me point to historical story there with Teddy Roosevelt. Not only did he not become president, he got shot. So, like,
but he lived.
Yeah, he lived. But thankfully, because of a speech,
you make a big deal out of it.
But what I will say is, I find it hard to believe. Like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can be put on the ballot, and there's a libertarian dedicated group that's like 3 to 5% in most of these states. He does not have the charisma of a Teddy Roosevelt to really go out and grow that number in any meaningful way. And on the issues, the libertarians think he's too progressive on gun control.
Well, you know why
Democrats don't think he's progressive enough.
You know why Donald Trump does not want RFK Jr. to be the libertarian nominee is because if you want, so with the danger with no labels for Joe Biden is that if you want to lodge a protest vote and you're a normie, right, that you can say, well, I couldn't vote for either of these two, but but if I park a vote with no labels here, I'm saying I want things to be nice and normal and better. But if you are a Trump voter and you want the chaos, if bringing the pain and upsetting the order is your goal, RFK Jr. does that. That's a vote that does that. So that hurts Trump.
What do you make of this Quinnipiac University poll, though, today? General election matchup, not just head-to-head, but all 5 candidates. Biden, Trump, RFK Jr., West, and Stein. It shows President Biden up by 2 on Donald Trump.
Look at Cornel West's hair, though.
You think that's accurate? Around the table real quick, you think that's accurate? Or
3%, the poll's 100% in the hair.
But in any scenario where there's third party involved, I think it's to the benefit of Donald Trump if it gets tossed to the Electoral College.
You agree to that or no?
And that's because every state gets 1 vote in the Electoral College in the House.
If it goes to the House.
If it goes to the House.
But I've seen 100 of those polls. Yeah. It looks like the general trend is that Biden and Trump are really, really close head-to-head, and Biden and Trump are really, really close every time you put a third or fourth or fifth person on there, which means they're drawing equally from both sides.
All right. Still much more ahead here on The Hill. Top social media CEOs testifying before Congress earlier today about online safety. How many times have we already seen this happen? It's been going on for years, really. So will big tech or Congress actually do something this time around? And what that man said today. Plus, 1 year after the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, and President Biden, the White House says, now President Biden is finally going to Ohio. But is it too little, too late? Stay with us.
Elizabeth Warren and Lindsey Graham have almost nothing in common. I promised her I would say that publicly. We have sort of parked that because Elizabeth and I see an abuse here that needs to be dealt with. Mr. Zuckerberg, you and the companies before us, I know you don't mean it to be so, but you have blood on your hands.
Welcome back to The Hill. That, of course, the South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. Now, that committee earlier today held an emotional hearing with the CEOs of 5 of the biggest tech companies in the world, social media companies. The executives grilled over concerns that they are not doing enough to protect teenagers and young children online. Now, the hearing was in front of a packed house, including several parents showing photos of their children who were affected by this issue. A powerful backdrop while senators scolded the CEOs for their lack of action. Some of these parents you can see holding up the pictures of their children who lost their lives. There was also a moment in which Senator Josh Hawley pushed Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg to apologize to those very families.
Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all terrible. No one could actually go through the things that your families have suffered.
That, the Meta CEO earlier today. A heart-wrenching scene. When you see the pictures, when you hear Mark Zuckerberg there, what do you see? What do you hear from him?
Do you remember what Google, now Meta's corporate motto was when they first started? Has been
Facebook or Google?
I'm sorry. He's Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I lose track because Google's alphabet. I'm sorry. It was the other ones. Don't be evil. And that's what they've turned into, right? Listen, it's very powerful stuff. You have to give them credit. People will parse the language. When you apologize to people, you don't apologize for what's happened to them. You apologize for what you have done. You don't say, I'm sorry you've had to go through this. You say, I'm sorry for what I have done. Again, to be parsing that out. But I think generally speaking, it's a pretty powerful moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like these are tough issues to solve. I mean, like, the social media companies can and should do more, and I think there's legislation out there, and I hope those pieces of legislation get just as much airtime. But also, too, this is a law enforcement problem, too. Like, our law enforcements are dramatically underfunded. They don't have the tech capability to help prosecute. So even if these social media companies are turning over, like, suspected people who are, using it to abuse children, sometimes nothing happens because the law enforcement, especially local ones, don't have the capability to do this. And so I think this is also a law enforcement funding issue.
I'm curious about the precedent this sends to other social media CEOs and tech executives. I mean, we've seen the CEO of TikTok on Capitol Hill.
He was there today.
Elon Musk, all of that. So what do they do going forward? Does Zuckerberg's apology, even though I think you're correct in how he parsed his words, does that put more pressure on them?
During the Spanish Inquisition, the way
the
way that you got yourself a swift and merciful death was by an auto de fe, an act of faith, an expression of faith. You had to say, yes, I am a converso. I have changed my mind. Watching Josh Hawley, this Elmer Gantry figure berating, you will stand up and you will apologize to those people. Legislate something. Yeah. Pass a law. Don't drag these people in here so that you can get the clip that you want. I made him do it. Well, it doesn't count if you make him do it.
Hold that thought, because the soundbite that really caught my attention along those lines was this one right here.
I just want to get this stuff done. I'm so tired of this. It's been 28 years, since the internet. We haven't passed any of these bills because everyone's double talk. It's time to actually pass them. And the reason they haven't passed is because of the power of your company.
Oh, the power of the company. But then there's also Congress, right? Is the flip of this. Mark Zuckerberg, okay? He testified twice in April of 2018, October of 2019, 3 times in the summer end of July of 2020, July, October, November, March of 2021, January of 2024 today. You see the timeline there. And how many laws have been passed? Look at the bottom right of your screen. That is a fat 0.
Who is the number one proponent? What has Mark Zuckerberg said in each of those appearances? Regulate me, please regulate me, because if you're an industry leader, you want to stop competition and you want to pull the ladder up behind you. And he wants the kinds of advantages that companies like AT&T and big airlines and others have, which is they have dominant spaces in highly regulated industries. He wants to be regulated. The reason they don't pass legislation is that this is really what they're here for. Lindsey Graham is here for this. Josh Hawley is here for this, because these are good boogeymen to beat up. You can thrash them around. This is like the cigarette companies of yore. You just beat them up and people are like, oh, that was so great, the way you were really mean to that guy.
I'm old enough to remember when they brought the TikTok CEO in and said, yeah, they went after him nonstop. That was last summer. And what's been passed?
Zero.
And
so why don't they
go ahead.
Well,
I was going to say, in my experience, Democrats in particular want to kind of hold everything together and do one big overhaul. We don't have to do that here. There are so many good pieces of legislation out there introduced by members that can help. For instance, there's one by Padilla and Wyden, Senators Wyden and Padilla, about investing in Child Safety Act that could help protect children right now, and it would have the votes to pass. Let's put it on the floor and move forward. But I think sometimes Democrats think if they piecemeal it out, they're missing the chance for larger reform. That's clearly never going to happen here. Let's regulate and pass laws that add more restrictions.
All right. Still to come here from the Hill. President Biden will head to East Palestine, Ohio, to mark 1 year since a toxic train derailment endangered that community. 1 year. So why has it taken so long? And how about this question? Should Donald Trump win a Nobel Peace Prize? Who is raising that possibility?
Sounds legit.
The case they're making. Stay with us. The Hill is back in a few. Plus, by the way, on the other side of the break, Hot Mic with Mick. What Mick is hearing, what Mick is thinking about right now with Nikki Haley. Hot Mic with Mick coming up. Stay with us. Ahead of Saturday, which marks 1 year since a Norfolk Southern train, as you know, derailed in that town, spilling toxic chemicals and devastating the East Palestine community. Now, the president will meet with residents affected and assess the ongoing cleanup efforts. You know, this took a year for him to get there. The White House kept saying he was going to go, he was going to go, he was going to go. Why so long? And if this was a swing state, would he have gone earlier?
Well, we were talking about this before about, if he could actually win Ohio. And Ohio is basically... He cannot, okay. Yeah. No. Ohio is, for all intents and purposes, a red state. But we do know that there's a big high-profile Senate race there. The last statewide elected Democrat in Ohio, Sherrod Brown. So my question about this is, does Sherrod Brown show up with Biden? What's the political calculation on that?
Put your chief of staff hat on. What do you make of this?
Should have been there a long time ago. Now, if you're going to go after this long of a delay, the anniversary date is really the only window, because that's what you're going, and the message is fairly clear, which is we haven't been here. We didn't want to make a big show of it. Everybody else who came early has now left. We're here, and we've been working on this back in Washington, D.C. It's not great. It's not the perfect message. It's pretty much the best you could do under these circumstances.
Does this show Ohio's no longer a swing state by the actions?
I mean, look, I think everyone...
Give in. It'll feel good when you get in.
Any reasonable political analyst knows Ohio's off the map. Right. The White House has known that. I think if you're going to go, I agree with Mick, this is the time to go, because what's sometimes bad about these disasters, and I used to work for the mayor of New Orleans, is that people were there in the very beginning.
You were there for Katrina, right?
Well, no, I was there for the 10th anniversary of Katrina. But
don't put that on him.
The problem is when you have such a bad disaster like where infrastructure is fundamentally messed up, like, it is a long-term commitment. And so let's not I know there's politics here, but let's not underestimate the value that this is going to mean to the families.
You are Sherrod Brown's chief of staff or his political director. Do you tell him to go or not go?
You go. I think you go. In a disaster situation, you push politics aside, you go.
Well, and also you say, I made it.
Yes.
Right?
Take credit for
it.
What you're saying is, and what Biden, because he's good at this, will say when he gets there is, Sherrod Brown has been in my ear talking about this, and he won't let me forget for a second. And
I bet the Republican governor is there as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, earlier today I spoke with the Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania, Chris DeLuzio. The derailment happened less than a mile over the state line from his district. It borders East Palestine. I asked him about the president's upcoming visit and whether it's simply too late.
Look, I think the most important thing the Biden administration has been doing and can do right now is to continue to hold this railroad accountable, but also to put the pressure on Congress to get something done. I lead the Railway Safety Act in the House. It's bipartisan. We've got the senators from Ohio and Pennsylvania leading in the Senate. It is a travesty that we haven't seen this bill on the president's desk yet. I'm pushing as hard as I can. Folks want to know that these railroads are going to be held to account and forced to operate more safely, protect our communities.
What would that bill do, if you could tell me about it? Because I know it's made it out of committee, but has it made it out of the House or the Senate? I think the president supports it.
Yeah, and look, Secretary Buttigieg was in Western Pennsylvania just last week, again reaffirming the need to pass this bill to give the Department of Transportation that he leads more authority, more power. So one of the parts of the bill will stiffen the fines that railroads have to pay when they break the rules, when they aren't operating safely, and of course giving the Department of Transportation more power to require stricter safety rules when they're transporting hazardous materials, hazardous chemicals, like what we saw in the East Palestine derailment, and much more. Many of these provisions, from two-person staffing and the rest, These are things we've known about for a long time. They shouldn't be controversial. The only controversy here is they might make the railroads skim a little off those fat profits, but they'll keep communities like ours safer, which we got to do.
You know, Congressman, I look at both sides of the aisle here. President Biden took him a year to get to East Palestine. On the Republican side, the former Congressman Bill Johnson, he's no longer representing that district. He took a high-paying job at a university there in the state of Ohio. So when you look at it taking the president quite some time, and even East Palestine not even having representation right now, has Washington failed that area as you see it?
I think the failure right now has been the inability to move my bill, the Railway Safety Act, through the House and the Senate. The Senate at least has had a committee vote, and it's cleared that hurdle. We still have Republican senators holding it up with the filibuster threat. In the House, I've got Republican co-sponsors along with my Democratic colleagues, but the Republican leadership has not advanced my bill. That is a failure. Secretary Buttigieg and others in the Biden administration have been clear they need more authority and more power to make these railroads follow stricter rules. We've got to get this done.
All right, got to leave it there. Congressman DeLuzio, thanks for being back here on the Hill. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Blake.
All right, some final time here with the panel before we go. Mick Mulvaney, want to get your thoughts on a few things. Your piece in the Hill today, talk to me about it. It says Nikki Haley chooses refreshing honesty in South Carolina, your home state.
Yeah, they asked Nikki this weekend on television how she had to do in South Carolina. Did she have to win? And she gave a really good answer, I thought. She said, I don't have to win, but I have to do better than I did in New Hampshire. It's a really insightful answer. She lost by 11 points in New Hampshire. She's going to have a lot of people telling her to keep going, because she's the only never-Trumper, in the race right now. Those people have nothing to lose. The people who are writing her big checks, the people who hate Donald Trump, have nothing to lose if Nikki Haley burns out. If Nikki Haley loses South Carolina by the current 20 or 30 that she's losing by, this hurts her big time going into 2028. If I'm Ron DeSantis, if I'm Sarah Huckabee Sanders, if I'm Greg Abbott, and I see Nikki Haley lose South Carolina by 20 points, I'm using that to help raise money against her in 2028. So she's got a lot at risk. And I think the answer she gave was really a rare, honest answer from a politician when it comes to getting out of a race. Remember, we were all together on Iowa. You were in Iowa freezing your butt off. We were here. And Vivek Ramaswamy was on the show, and he says, I'm going to stay in the race. I'm in New Hampshire. I'm in through South Carolina. I'm in through Super Tuesday. I'm going all the way to the convention. And he was out 2 hours later. And it didn't surprise anybody because we all know politicians lie about that stuff. Nikki, I think, gave an honest answer. And she should benefit from it.
You have a lot of titles. One of them includes the former head of the blockchain caucus.
Oh, yeah.
You started the thing. Headline, crypto heads toward 2024 election with $85 million war chest. Is this a thing?
It is a big thing, and it's not just this. Okay, this is one group. There's actually another group called the Digital Chamber of Commerce that's raising money on its own. So this is just the beginning. The names on that list are the real names in the blockchain crypto sort of world, but they're not the only big names in the blockchain crypto world. So there's going to be a lot more money on this issue. I think Bitcoin went past $43,000 this month. Every single time that goes up another $1,000, there's a lot more money to spend in Washington, D.C.
You want to talk to me about the House gym? Because how about this headline from Politico?
It's not the gym.
House Republican reported for doing pull-ups at the top of the Capitol Dome.
Yeah,
the Capitol Visitor Center has reported Rich McCormick for doing pull-ups at the top of the scaffolding there. What's that area like?
It's not the gymnasium. Let's be clear. And I've been up there a couple times. Okay. We've all been up there a couple times. I don't really think he was hanging over the edge, but they said it was several hundred feet in the air. I'm not sure if the guy was drinking or what the thing was. I mean, I don't know why you do this other than to get a little splash in the news.
Well, they seem to have a lot of free time on their hands.
Yeah, boy.
What's it like up there? You ever been up there?
It's surprisingly raw.
It's
surprisingly what?
Raw. You still see the original Capitol Dome, and then you have all this. You're climbing like metal rods to get to the top. Basically,
when you stand in the rotunda, look up, and there's a railing on the side. When you're at that railing, you look down. You can't see the walls because the arch of the dome, so it looks like you're floating in midair, and it's a little freaky. I've had people up there when I was a congressman who've actually become sick to their stomach because it is so intense. I've never had anybody do push-ups.
And women can't wear heels because you're literally climbing these little iron steps.
All right. Got to leave it there with y'all. Fun time.
Great time.
Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. On the other side of the break, Leland Vittert joins me. And how about this question? Is the fourth time the charm? Former President Trump is up for a Nobel Peace Prize once again. So who nominated him and what's it all about? Leland joins me and The Hill returns on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
special guest, Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill O'Reilly.
TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
Wait. Cuomo, you talk the whole time.
Right. Tonight at 8, 7 Central.
NewsNation has an opportunity.
Only on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back. Before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye. The Nobel Peace Prize's nominating window closes today. And while most nominees are kept secret, we know at least one name on the list. Former President Donald Trump. He was nominated by the GOP Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Now, in a statement, the Congresswoman says, quote, "The valiant efforts by President Trump in creating the Abraham Accords were unprecedented and continue to go unrecognized by the committee, underscoring the need for his nomination." Now, the Abraham Accords as the reason for the nomination from the Congresswoman. As you might remember, bilateral agreements signed by Bahrain, the UAE, Morocco, Sudan, involving Israel. Joining me now, the host of On Balance, Leland Vitter. Donald Trump for a Nobel Prize?
Not his first nomination.
Not his first. No. I think this is the fourth time.
Fifth time or something for this, something like this. I think it was because Claudia Tenney could not nominate herself for ambassador to Paris once Donald Trump becomes president. Look, I still would contend, and I think as somebody who had lived in the Middle East for a long time, I have standing to say this. It was the most, in retrospect, predictable possibility of something that could happen and something nobody thought possible. And because Donald Trump flipped the way everyone looked at the Middle East on its head, he started talking about Iran rather than the Palestinians, and to completely flip the narrative. In the
one of the interesting things for me covering the Trump administration for all 4 years was that the first presidential visit is always like, where are you going to go? He went to Saudi Arabia and Israel. And I remember being a part of the press corps like, wait a minute, Saudi Arabia and Israel, that's where we're going. But that was the first move for the former president.
It paid off big time.
It did pay off big time for him. All right. By the way, looking forward to